All right, guys, today we're talking about how to taste wine like a pro. First thing we have to do is conquer this idea that tasting wine is some sort of high class, high brow, really posh thing that people do. Yes, you can find that. But the most important thing is that you have a glass of wine that you enjoy. It's what I always say, and it always holds true. That said, there is some really fun stuff that you can do when you learn how to taste wine using the Deductive Tasting Method. And this right here, it's a really cool method that people use to taste wine blind, meaning they have no idea what wine is in their glass, and just by tasting it using this method, they can identify the exact wine in that glass that they're drinking, which is really cool to watch. But this method can also be used just to better enjoy a glass of wine that you have in front of you, and also to match it really nicely with any food you might have. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's a simple approach. Mostly, frankly, sometimes it can get really complicated. But if you practice this approach, you can have a blast. And this approach works in a hierarchy. Essentially, we start with our sight, then we go to our nose, then we go to our smell. And that helps us understand what's in the glass of wine and pick out all the different unique flavors and notes and aromas that we might be getting. And to start with the deductive tasting approach, we first need a white background. And this white background is going to help us better see the wine through the glass. If you have a dark background while you're looking at the wine in the glass, it's going to be more difficult to actually see the colors in the wine. I guess technically speaking, the next thing you're going to need is wine. And to start, we want to have a clear glass as much as we can possibly do. Remove any sort of print marks or any watermarks on the glass so that we can have a clear vision through the glass. Then we just pour the wine into the glass. Of course, this is pretty standard. And then once we've got the glass, we're going to start with that first thing that we're looking at, the sight. And to do this, we want to have some decent lighting, because one of the things that we're looking for is the color of the wine in the center of the glass and how that color changes to the outside rim of the glass. And that can tell us a few things about the wine potentially, like how dark is the wine itself, which will clue into what grape you might be drinking, whether it's a Cabernet or a Tempranillo or a Merlot. Things like that you can pick up on just based on the color, as well as the age of the wine. As wine develops over time, you can start to see some bronzing towards the rim of the glass. And this will happen over time, and it also depends on the grape variety. Some happen a little bit faster, some take a little bit longer, but it gives you an idea. Is this wine 3 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old if you see extreme bronzing? Then we're gonna give this wine a little swirl, and we're looking at the tears in the wine now. This is the little droplets that come down the side of the glass after the wine has touched a little bit higher up than where it's sitting. And we're gonna see if there's any coloring in those tears. And this wine here may be hard to see on camera, but there's just a slight bit of extract along the outer rim here we can see in the tears. Again, this is just to give us clues about the grape variety, but the thing we're most interested in is how this wine tastes and how we can pair it with foods and what type of environment we could be in where we would really enjoy this glass of wine. And that brings us to number 2 in the deductive tasting method, and that's the nose. And the nose is about as simple as it sounds. We're gonna take our glass of wine and we're gonna stick our nose into the glass and see what we pick up. First thing we're gonna be looking for is the concentration of aromas. Is this a highly aromatic wine? Can we pick up a lot of notes right on our nose? Or is it a little softer, a little bit more delicate? And does it take us a little bit of time or a little more concentration in order to really pick up any notes or aromas in the wine? So, stick our nose in. This wine right here has a medium concentration of flavors on the nose. When we stick our nose in the glass, we're looking for, is it red fruits, blue fruits? What type of fruits stick out to us? Are they dried fruits, jammy fruits, ripe fruits, underripe fruits, tart? And in this glass right here, picking up a lot of red fruits, tart cherry, raspberry, maybe some blueberry, a little bit of jammy strawberry. The next thing we're gonna do is stick our nose back in the glass. And we're gonna try and pick up any secondary flavors. These could be earthy notes, tobacco notes. We're trying to pick up if there's any hint of oak on the wine. Oak comes in notes like vanilla, can be cinnamon, things that would point to this wine being aged in oak. And on this wine especially, we're getting some vanilla, indicating that it was probably aged in some oak. And that also can add a creaminess to the wine, which is going to help us pair it with a food that we might enjoy with this wine. It actually has a really nice nose on it. It's pretty impressive. And you can also pick up other notes like the type of soil that the actual grape variety was grown on. This is one of the techniques that people use when blind tasting a glass of wine, to be able to see what type of soil, because that's gonna feed into the vine and eventually into the grapes. You can sometimes pick up chalky or granite or slate or wet rock notes, and that'll hint at exactly where the wine originally from the grape, where those grapes were grown. Now, in order to do that, you have to understand the types of soils that different grapes are grown on throughout the world, and that can take a lot of research to totally understand. So just skip past that. We're only focused on enjoying the glass. So the next thing we're gonna do is actually taste the wine. This is the best part. If we were doing this completely blind using the deductive tasting method, one of the things we're doing when we're tasting the wine is confirming some of the notes that we originally got when we were looking at the wine, as well as nosing the wine. And we're gonna see, do some of those notes still come through on the palate when we taste it? So grab our glass, give it a little swirl, put a little sniff in the glass, because remember, 85% of your taste comes from your smell. And then we'll taste the wine. And that thing that I'm doing right there might look a little bit funny, but essentially we're bringing air into the wine in our mouth, helping to aerate the wine, spreading it throughout our entire palate, swishing it around. There's different tasting spots on our tongue, and getting the wine throughout your entire tongue helps to taste all the different notes that might be in the wine. So when you grab a sip of the wine, tasting it, draw some air in through your mouth, swish it around, be rugged with this approach, don't look nice, and try and pick up as many different notes as you possibly can. When I taste this wine, instantly, a lot of the cherries coming back to me, raspberry, that strawberry is coming back, but it's a little bit more tart than I initially had thought. Getting a lot of earthy notes, secondary notes. The vanilla's there, hidden in the background, not as noticeable as before on the nose, but I'm getting a little bit of more soily notes on the palate as well with this wine. And if we're just tasting this wine for fun, the first thing that I'm thinking to myself is, do I enjoy this glass of wine? And as you taste more and more wines, you center in on exactly what you enjoy. This wine right here is right up my alley, the type of wine that I enjoy. It's not too overly fruity, too jammy. At the same time, this specific bottle tastes a little bit young, and the way that I'm picking that up is it just seems a little bit tight, a little bit more tardy, I guess is the way that I would describe it. And if it was sitting in the bottle for maybe another year or 2 years, it would be more approachable for me. But all in all, it's still a fantastic glass of wine. And this whole approach, the deductive tasting method, can be a little bit fancy, I guess, and most people might want to, or I should say some people might want it to be that way. At the end of the day, It's a method that you can use to find wines that you enjoy, on top of being able to blind identify wines. But if you practice this method on just any day bottles that you're drinking, it's gonna help you figure out exactly what type of wine you really enjoy tasting. And then sometimes, just by looking at the wine, you can be able to see, this might be a wine that I like. Then you can confirm it on your nose, and then at last on your palate. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you drink wine that you enjoy.